other question I had for you is more about the different projects that you've been jumping around on, and also what you went through deciding that you didn't want to be a director. I wonder if you could address that with the final
the directing
Tony
thing.
Blair project.
Yeah, the directing thing. It's sort of weird. It goes to the heart of what we've been discussing. Actually, it felt desperately lonely, and I wouldn't ever want to direct something that I hadn't written, which means I'm writing and directing, and to carry that without having, I mean, I sort of missed me, if you know what I mean. I missed the guy who was me, and I also really, that's why we were talking earlier about writer and director partnerships. It's so how I think this should be done, and the idea of being there on my own was just awful. I hated it and felt profound, and I wouldn't have guessed that beforehand. I would have guessed that I'd thrive, and you find out things about yourself. It also happened at a time where my mother was dying, and so I was unable to be fully present anyway. So I stepped down, unfortunately, with so little time to go that I almost left HBO in the lurch, but thankfully somebody else stepped in and did a great job. So
it was good.
Yeah, thank you. But you know, I have no intention. People say, "Oh, don't worry, you'll step back on that horse." I'm like, "You must be joking."
No, it doesn't sound like it. No, I read that. So what about the next Tony Blair project?
Well,
you haven't let him go yet.
I haven't let him go, but at the same time, I'm prepared to wait a while because, you know, Michael needs to get older, because I want to look at maybe what happens as you leave office. And secondly, I almost certainly do it for television. I think that, you know, the world has changed so much in terms of what kind of movies are or are not. You know, the time of the Queen is already very different, you know, and the more you do it on British television, the more specific you can be about British politics. You don't have to make concessions for an international audience.
I'd like to see that version of it also. I really would.
Me too. I found even this last version dealing with having an American consciousness coming into it very difficult, and I don't really want to share that. And so if I want to write about Tony Blair, I just want a whole lot of Brits to be surrounding it, and that's not, you understand that. It's because to me it's a film about him.
I'd rather see that anyway. I mean, it's the equivalent of what the Australians did with the I don't know if you ever saw the great George Miller. There was a whole series of great George Miller recreations of great political moments in Australian political history.
Right, I didn't see that.
Extraordinary.
Wow.
Just extraordinary. Worth checking out someday.
Right.
But I'll cut that part out too. Just between us, yeah. And then what was it like working on James Bond?
Well, that was short-lived. You know, I started work on that, and
then the whole thing went to hell.
Then the whole thing went to hell, and now I'm so happy doing something else that I wouldn't, even if the whole thing came back from hell. I think they've got a tough job.
So were you doing what they conventionally, have you been hired often now to do what they call a polish, or were you working from scratch on the Bond ideas?
Oh no, that was from scratch.
It was?
Yeah, when I was involved last year, that was from scratch. I have no idea if they've even regrouped yet with the...
I doubt it.
With the situation being the way it is at MGM.
It's not resolved.
So there came a point where we all just had to say, well, look, I'm just going to step off, and they will step.
How far did you get?
Wrote a treatment.
Just a treatment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I never wrote a script. Wrote a treatment, and...
But again, I mean, for you, what was it like to do an assignment like that when you've been so organically involved in so many of your screenplays? I know you've been a writer for hire, but still, not so many.
Not really, not
as
much.
most people.
Yeah. Well, I went there with an original idea.
Ah, you pitched it to them.
I pitched an idea. Well, they said, would you consider
Are you allowed
writing a
to
Bond
say
film?
what it is?
No.
I want to know.
No. I went there with an idea, and...
What, a Bond idea just came to you?
No. they had already expressed interest, and we had met, in fact, the
then
year
you went
before,
home
the
with
Quantum
the
of Solace
assignment
year.
of coming up with something.
And then, yes, and I said, well, look, if I come up with something, I'd be interested, but if I don't come up with something, I'm probably not your man.
Right.
And then I came up with something, and everyone was interested in the idea, and I wrote the idea, and it remains to be seen what they do. I have no idea. I suspect that if they start again, they'll start entirely again. I think that there was momentum behind my idea for a moment, and I suspect that moment's probably gone. And I'm not really interested in not doing what I'm doing at the moment, which I'm enjoying too much.
Which is what?
Freddie Mercury.
I agree that reflects the way the world is now. And the movie itself is multicultural in a way that I
Yes.
found very appealing. And I also, and the fact that you just went with subtitles, all good. And then
Oh yes, I beg your pardon. That was one conversation I had. The two conversations I had when I heard that Clint wanted to do it was, I said, this is absolutely fine, because I had the rights to sell, and I said on two conditions: that the child in London is filmed with social reality. That, in other words, that the inner city deprivation and the poverty that this child comes from is believable and genuine and authentic. And my second deal breaker, as it were, is that the French is filmed in French. I don't want anybody talking in a French accent. We're past that. And we coexist alongside other languages and other cultures to such a degree now. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.